Welcome everybody, this is Power of Magic, which is a one-off segment based on a sort of series that we've done before, just talking about magic systems in writing your fantasy books, or books with supernatural elements, things that are going to have some kind of consistency in the rules and powers and abilities that they actually give your characters. How do they work? How do they change? What can they do? What can't they do? And questions like this. Ooh, there we go. So we're in a stage channel. If you're just joining us on something like YouTube, Twitch, or Facebook, or any of these other sites, then you should come join us in Discord, because then you can actually participate in the classes. And if you do, then you can raise a hand by clicking that hand icon in the Discord channel, and then I can invite you to speak out loud on the stage. We are WordCamp. This is our novel writing focused server, but our main server is Script Camp, which has lots of free events, workshops, classes, and genre group meetups every week. We have over 100 hours of events every month, so you should come by Script Camp and WordCamp events if you're interested in writing TV shows, features, or books. We have lots of other servers as well. Maybe you've heard of things like Code Camp or Toon Camp for coding and animation. There are events on these servers. They're not as big as our main two, but we are adding more stuff to these all the time, so definitely check these out. We have a bunch of table reads. I'm not going to go over the every event coming up, but we have 2 script swaps a week, 2 different prose readings, and 3 different table reads of scripts. So lots of chances to get your work read and get feedback on it from the community. Here's just a list of everything we have coming up. We will have new boot camps that will be starting at the start of next month, so that would be early April. We'll be doing new sessions of feature and TV boot camp, and we're working up towards this new novel boot camp as well that will be starting in late March, early April. So in a couple weeks, we will be starting new sessions of everything. So if you're interested in writing something brand new feature, play, pilot, or book, then there's a class for that. If you have not yet signed up and need to join, you can sign up at scriptcamp.net/membership, or just the main page, I think, scriptcamp.net. Now, we'll bring you to the list of all the different membership options, which you can find unlimited right in the middle here, which gives you access to every event, every class on every server. If you buy yearly, you save 40% on that as well. So make sure to sign up if you'd like to continue past the early weeks of any bootcamp, or past just the free events that we offer. Okay, so let's get into magic. So we don't have a long slideshow today, as this is mostly going to be a discussion-based class, and there's going to be some just set up at the beginning, but then we will go into lots of examples and workshopping sort of some brand new magic systems from scratch. So, let's just get started. Magic in stories. What is magic? Well, first of all, some people think magic is real, so we aren't really talking about actually doing spells in real life. So we're strictly talking about in the world of fiction, although you could say that certain religions and practices around the world might use what we consider to be magic systems, right? Sort of what differentiates a religion from a magic system is that a magic system promises those sort of instant replicable results, which religions don't exactly promise, because even in the religions that promise the most, like, you know, the deity will answer your prayers, things like this, there is always this built-in element of, well, but like, it's open to interpretation how those prayers exactly will manifest. Or sometimes the answer is wait, or it could be, there's any number of reasons why in major religions, nobody ever says that you can just do a prayer and instantly get a thing. That's sort of the difference between a magic system and a religion, right? Is that a magic system in a story world produces replicable results. It behaves a little bit more like what we might consider science in the real world, in that there are rules that govern it. There are consistencies. When you do something the same way another time in a different context, it might apply differently, but the same rules basically will apply. There are usually pretty quick results in magic systems and stories, simply because that's more fun for us to imagine and to see in fictional contexts. Like casting a fireball that doesn't manifest for 2 weeks is a little bit less instantly engaging than casting a fireball that works immediately right on the spot, but at the very least you can see the principle that is at play there, right? Like, a magic system could work in any way you want. It could be that you cast a fireball, and then 10 years later the magic manifests. I don't know exactly what context that would come up in, or when that would be useful, but there's no rules that say that this has to work like any other magic system. There are certain magic systems that work better in different sorts of mediums and genres, like that sort of instantaneous, flashy stuff works really well in movies and TV shows. And you can see why that's why movies and fantasy movies and fantasy shows tend to be really big budget affairs that have lots of special effects and monsters and fireballs and all these lightning bolts and things like this, because to focus on the purely mental magic would be difficult to portray and would not look as exciting in a movie or show. Whereas there are some books with magic systems wherein the magic plays out entirely in people's minds, or it's entirely invisible, or you don't have to actually cast any magic words to use it. It's all based on thought or perception or transmitting your consciousness or other things like that, which are just kind of hard to show in an effective, interesting way on screen. So you can see why different mediums, just different types of magic systems, work better in different sorts of stories. We're almost always trying to err on the side of fun. So in fantasy especially, that idea of the sense of wonder being central to the reader experience is kind of carried by the magic system to some extent, or some readers, I should say, are reading specifically for the sense of wonder that they gain from magic in those stories. Magic can take different forms. It doesn't always have to be a wand that you cast, you say words, and you wave it around, and it does a thing right then and there. You have to kind of broaden your imagination of how these things could work to really use them in stories if you consider that you're not locked into the tropes that you've seen before. You can certainly write in the tradition of something that you've seen before, like if you want to use straight Vancian magic, which is the name for the sort of D&D style magic. You have a number of spells that you can use per day, and you expend them like ammunition. That sort of thing, that's called Vancian magic, after the author Jack Vance. You can write that. There's nothing preventing you from doing that, and if fans of the genre are going to be reading something that typically fits into the other tropes of that sort of story, they'll probably expect a magic that works more or less like it normally does in those stories. So if you're writing D&D style adventures, Vancian magic is kind of par for the course. That said, you can always innovate and expand and say, I'm running D&D style books that have crazy different magic, where instead of wizards casting fireballs, it's all based on ideas. So when you have a strong enough idea, it manifests into reality. And therefore, writers in this world are a form of gods, because the more ideas that they have, the more that they can summon creatures that come to life around them, things like this, right? Completely different idea, non-Vancian at all. Wouldn't probably not even work in a game in the same context. So you can see why some systems are easy to sort of gamify, easier than others to gamify, right? If they're based on concrete, hard numbers, those are usually going to be a little bit easier to gamify and include in things like video games, massive multiplayer online role-playing games, things like this. Tabletop games where we want people to buy the book and be able to look through and choose the options for their character, what their character is going to be sort of capable of in this world, and then they're going to be able to mix and match those with different other options that the game gives them to build the exact sort of character they want. Not every story has to have a magic system that is that versatile, or is that accessible to everyone, or is that designable or customizable. That sort of just works in games really well, because it's fun to have a pool of points that you spend on different abilities, like sub-abilities within a larger category. Like, you want to be able to give your players options. A lot of the time, players they don't always want to use their creativity to come up with all the rules themselves, so it's helpful to have options that simply act as buttons they can press on their sheet that tell them what their character will then be capable of. But you can have a sort of more abstract magic systems in stories that are not interactive with players, right? Because any system where players have to be interacting with it, they have to understand the rules as well as you do. Whereas in stories, the characters don't have to understand the magic, right? Can somebody think of a fantasy franchise where the characters themselves don't understand the magic, or the rules are just not very clear to anyone? Luke says Star Wars. Yeah, Star Wars, pretty big difference between the movies and the video games and the books as well, right? They all sort of interpret that same sort of central magic system of the Force in different ways, right? Can you talk about the differences and how different adaptations interpret the magic in Star Wars?
So you might want to look at that.
Can kind of do anything it needs to do, and depending on the genre, I guess. You need it to bring someone back to life, if you need it to do time travel, if you need it to do, whatever it is. It just kind of doesn't seem to have rules.
So are you talking about I missed the first part. Did you say this is in the movies, or this is in the franchise as a whole?
In general, just in the franchise as a whole, yeah. It seems like in games they give it sort of like healing powers and that kind of thing. Yeah, but if they need it to do something strange, like I've read some Star Wars books way back in the day, and they did all kinds of weird stuff with the Force that didn't really make sense. Like walking through walls, like reality bending, just so.
Yeah, so pretty much everything except time travel, which is sort of the one thing that Star Wars.
And they have done time travel with it, I'm pretty sure.
In some of the books they may have touched on it, but those are all non-canon now. In any case, for the most part, time travel is usually not a part of Star Wars, which I'm actually pretty grateful for, considering how complicated it makes various different franchises. But in any case, so yeah, we have different interpretations depending on the many different authors that have written in this series, right? So I would say that for the most part in the movies, we err a little bit more on that sense of unknowingness, mystery, and wonder when it comes to the Force. It's like, what can Obi-Wan actually do in the original trilogy? I don't know if I could even tell you what Obi-Wan exactly can do, right? What can Obi-Wan actually do in old Obi-Wan?
Subtly influence people.
He can mind trick. Yep.
Maybe.
He can do that.
That's about it.
Yeah, that's all we really see him do in the original franchise, or in the original trilogy. He can sword fight pretty well, according to Negan. Yep, that's true. So he has perhaps a bit of the old man strength due to the Force guiding his actions and stuff like this. He has a certain amount of wisdom, but like, can he still do the stuff that he could do when he was younger? Because we saw in all the other movies and shows about Obi-Wan, he could do all kinds of flips and stuff. He could do Force push and pull, which we definitely see him use. He actually doesn't use the Force that much. Obi-Wan is not I guess that's not his strongest suit. But within the video games, we have to be a lot clearer about what each power's limitations are, right? To the extent that you have Force points that you can spend on different powers and abilities. Where in the movies, are there Force points? No. In the games also, there's this idea of you have to pick up power-ups to use the Force abilities in some games, right? Like think of Jedi Academy, Jedi Outcast, games like this, where they're sort of like floating in holocrons on the ground that you have to pick up. And you were right, also, the healing that they use in the games is much more substantial than they use in the movies. Although in Rise of Skywalker, at one point, she does use the Force to heal a big lizard monster, so it's like sort of just not that incredibly well defined what the Force is or how it works. It kind of depends on the rules of that individual entry in the franchise, is how we kind of determine what can it do here in this context with the abilities that your characters have access to. Any other thoughts on that from Luke?
Yeah, I just noticed, Force Lightning is always a dark side skill in video games. They sort of divide things we see in the movies into categories. Like, oh, that's good and that's evil. And only a Sith could do this, and only a Jedi could do this, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and so the Force has two sort of main sub-magic systems, which are the light side and the dark side, which they operate with different rules. You get powerful in them in different ways, and they give you access to different stuff. Usually, the light side powers are more based on helping and healing, whereas dark side powers are more about hurting and controlling. But then again, is mind trick a dark side power? Because seemingly no. Right?
It seems like it's just a neutral Force power.
From the Jedi's own code and rules, it would almost seem like it would have to be dark side, but it's used by everyone, and they don't seem to think it is. So yeah, it's kind of, it's hard. Morality-based magic systems are weird because we don't all agree on morality.
Right. That's the problem I was going to point out. Like, the Paladins are always the bad guy to somebody, Yeah. Same with the Jedi Knights.
Right, exactly. So it's like the balance of a morality-based magic system has to kind of be in such a morally black and white world that everyone can tell what good and evil is, or else it stops making any sense. Like having a good or evil, you couldn't have the Force in Game of Thrones world, because what would the light side and the dark side even be? When everyone's doing so much messed up stuff, is everyone just dark side, or is it that light and dark don't exist in that world, right? So, magic and morality can have this interesting kind of intersection when one is powered by the other, right? Because it can reinforce the themes of your world. Having a magic system that's based on good versus evil makes the most sense in stories with a very black and white sense of thematic morality. Thanks for the thoughts on that, Luke. Becky, do you have some thoughts you want to share?
Yeah, I was just going to say that a lot of younger children's books tend to have magic systems that are less kind of rigid and more sort of just seeing the world differently. So, ones where animals talk, there's not always a reason why they can talk, they just can talk.
Mm-hmm.
Or Roald Dahl, where he has the witches, and there's kind of inbuilt rules in it, but in a way it's like imagination. I mean, you have the BFG and the giants go and collect dreams, so it's kind of like anything goes a lot of the time with younger children's magic.
Yeah, younger audiences have less of a sense of requirement of suspension of disbelief, I guess, because their suspension of disbelief is already lower than most adults. So you don't have to, counterintuitively, you have to explain things to older audiences more. Because they'll be looking for rules and consistency where younger audiences won't, or they won't care. Or, they kind of like that it's not that definite. Go ahead.
Yeah, a child just accepts that, oh, this character can talk, this animal can talk. Okay.
Right.
It's just kind of, when you read, there's one I love, which is, it's my favourite children's book. It's a place called Perfect, and it's all about this town that's like people are making everybody behave a certain way, and they give people rose tinted glasses, literally, so that they see this place differently, and they're literally growing eyeballs in as plants,
right.
Rose tinted, to transplant to give people rose tinted eyes. And it's like, an adult, I mean, my mum read it and she's like, I don't get it, I don't understand it, like, why does rose tinted glasses make them see the world differently? But a kid's like, oh yeah, people say rose tinted glasses, yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So
that sense of metaphor is just also real, kind of. It is easier to leverage into your magic system if the audience is more willing to just automatically accept that, which is not to say you can't do that in an adult series. You definitely could, but it being so on the nose and obvious is almost to your benefit when it comes to a younger demographic, as opposed to with an adult, they would almost not trust the rose tinted glasses, right? Because they know the full connotations of that phrase.
I would also argue that when the younger you write, you still have your rules in place, obviously. The younger you write, the less explanation for the magic you should have.
Right, exactly.
Because you can almost destroy it if there's an explanation for it. To them, it's not magic anymore.
Mm-hmm. Think of something like Toy Story. The magic system in Toy Story is pretty simple, and it's something that a kid could have thought of, because it's kind of something kids already have thought of, which is the nice thing about it, right? Which is when you go out of the room, the toys come to life, or they're always alive, but when you are in the room, they're in a dormant state where they sort of want to be played with, right? Then when I guess they're sort of brought to life in the first place by the love and playfulness of children is sort of what powers them. And then the idea being that when they're being played with, they consider that kind of key to their status and hierarchy, like whoever gets played with more in their dormant state is like a more important toy. But I don't think it's that if they don't get played with, they turn into an inanimate object forever, right? Is that part of it? I haven't seen the fourth one. Maybe that
they don't die as such. No, so
they don't die, right?
It is like being played with that brings them to life. So there's rules, but there's not anything that says, I don't know, a company managed to implant some AI intelligence into them and that's why they're alive. It's
exactly.
Just, of course toys are alive.
Right.
Why wouldn't they be?
And nobody seems to know about it because kids already sort of act like that's true. And the fact is, if a kid even were to tell an adult about it, they wouldn't believe them. And when they get older, I think the kids would not remember, right? Isn't that how it usually works in that sort of system, where they sort of assume that was all just like childish fantasy?
That was Mary Poppins. So in Mary Poppins, in Mary Poppins Returns, the film, I'm not sure about the books, the two children from Mary Poppins are now grown up, and Mary Poppins comes back to help their children. They have these vague memories, like they recognise Mary Poppins.
Mm-hmm.
They've forgotten all of the magic. They don't remember the fact that it was magical. And then at the end, everyone's sort of floating with balloons, and they're floating in the sky. And it's all wonderful. And someone says, aren't you worried? And they're like, oh, they're adults. They'll forget about it by the morning and think it was just a dream. And so it's kind of this idea that actually our dreams are, as adults, we've forgotten about it, but as children,
there's a sort of other dynamic that some magic systems have. We talked about the dichotomy of the good versus evil one. There is another really strong and clear dichotomy in a lot of magic systems, which is the division between adults and children, and the idea of belief sort of factoring into how the magic works. Either you believe, like Santa style magic is the same thing, where the more that you believe in it, or sometimes the more people that believe in it, the more powerful it is. And the fact that children have that lower level of suspension of disbelief means that they proportionally give more of their belief to the things that they, the supernatural stuff they interact with, right?
And it makes sense in, to real life when we say, we always say it's children and dogs that can see the creepy things.
Mm-hmm.
It's always the children see the ghosts, or the children, and the adults are like, oh, don't be so silly.
Yeah.
It's just an imaginary friend until they find out that it was a dead woman who died years ago in the house.
There's a really, really subtle moment in The Ring from 2003, the amazing, very popular American horror movie, The Ring, which I assume you've seen at some point, Becky. You've seen
I
this, right?
prefer the Japanese version, but yeah.
You do, okay. But so in the American one, there's a great moment. So the whole series is about, or at least the whole first movie is about the connection between parents and children. And the idea being that children are more attuned to or sensitive to things like not just magic, but also each other's feelings and things like that. The disconnect between the mom and her son is a huge central part of the movie's dramatic structure. But because the kid is the only one that can perceive and the only one that really believes that Samara is a magic ghost and everything, there's a scene where Rachel first goes to Shelter Mountain Lodge, and the guy behind the counter is just doing card tricks, and he keeps trying to do card tricks, and he keeps messing them up, and at the end of the scene, he's even like, was this your card? And she's like, yeah, that was it. And it's clearly not. I think that scene is there to really show even more that disconnect between the supernatural and adults and children, right? The children have this really intuitive sense of the magic, and the kid doesn't even really question it when he starts getting psychic messages from this dead girl, right? But adults have no understanding of it or connection to it and can't even make a magic trick work. I think that's why that was there, is to really reinforce that barrier, and that sort of that type of understanding that younger and older people have. Because we sort of come to believe that the older you get, you lose some kind of connection to the supernatural or your ability to understand it, or adult life grinds it out of you or whatever.
Yeah.
Any more thoughts on that? Thank you, Becky. Oh, that sounded I feel like the way I said that made it sound like I was dismissing her right away. Any more thoughts? Go away. But I really meant, thank you, Becky. If you have any more thoughts, feel free to share. Sometimes I just talk
No. That's fine. I was just say that Lasagna put some comments in the chat on here. I don't know if you can read them.
Oh, great. Is this about... She says there's 3 books, Savvy, Scumble, and Switch, where there's a family, they reach the age of 13, they get their savvy. Savvy can be anything from being able to move mountains, being perfect at everything you do, and seeing the past and future. Okay, so it's a little magic talent sort of thing. There's not really a system, just powers special to the family line specifically, where they can just get anything. Well, there is a system if they get it at the age of 13, right? There's the second there are rules that start being replicable, the second we start being able to apply rules to it, there is some kind of system there. Thank you for sharing that. There's a those are always fun, the systems that are based on everybody gets some kind of power, but you don't choose what kind of power you get. That's everything from your Xanth to your X-Men, although X-Men it's considered you become a second-class citizen almost if you get this random magic superpower. But the sort of pick a card, any card version of magic where you just end up with something. is such a fun way into a lot of worlds because it raises instant questions like, well, which power is your main character going to get? What if they haven't gotten their power yet? What do they have to do to get it? How do they learn to use it for the first time? How do they learn what they can even do? A Spell for Chameleon, which is the first book from the Xanth series by Piers Anthony, is set in a world where everybody gets a random magic power that could range in usefulness anywhere from you can make a pink spot appear on the wall all the way up until you can cause, like, cataclysmic storms or things like that, right? It's completely random. 0 to 100. Anyone can have literally any power. And the hook of the first book is that the main character, he's getting older, he's like a later teenager, and he just seems to not have one. He's like the only person in the world who seems to not know what he can actually do. Which makes for this really interesting kind of built-in internal arc for the character, figuring out where do I fit in a world where I don't even seem to be able to do a thing like everybody else can. How can I find what my power is, if I even have one at all? Do I have to unlock it? Do I have to earn it somehow? It just provides a really nice sort of structure for a fantasy-type story to just build something into the system that's like a question that needs to be answered. And having these kind of built-in questions that needs to be answered is just a really nice way of tying your magic system to your story world. And not just saying, okay, here's the story, now I guess I need a magic system too. It's sort of marrying the two together so that one can't exist without the other. It's just a way to approach writing, especially fantasy novels, where we sort of expect authors to put this extra level of thought into the mechanics of the world and how the powers and abilities work, and the readership is looking for this. A lot of people specifically say they're looking for interesting magic systems. Okay, we have some comments from the chat. I want to just read back and make sure we get everyone. If you're commenting on something besides Discord, then sometimes it does take a few minutes for them to actually show up and for us to see them. All right, looks like we have some comments from Twitch. Oiramui says he's excited people talking about magic systems. Naruto and Avatar. Yeah, anime magic systems tend to be a little more along the video gamey lines, where if you consider that most of these manga series are so long, it helps to have really concrete steps of progression that can last a long time, so that we can understand your character has to what is it, Avatar? You have to master the 5 different elements, right? He's the airbender. I haven't actually watched or seen Avatar, so everybody's going to yell at me for this, but I understand the idea that in an elemental system that's sort of based around the idea of you have to master each element separately in order to kind of become the master of all of them, and that's the most important person, the best person that everyone would like to be. And there's a lot of that idea in systems, that any system you see that has kind of like a chart with like 5 different points on a pentagram or things like this that represent different elements or sources of magic or power, then most of the time these are going to be ones where the idea is that you're in a longer form series. A lot of the time the characters are trying to collect them all or catch them all or be able to do everything. Okay, do we have a question from Carmen? Go ahead, Carmen. All right, you're on the stage, Carmen. You'll just need to unmute your mic.
Okay, when I was reading Sabriel, I had that sense of the magic not being really well defined, and I felt like I was like floating in and out of different dimensions when I was reading it. It was like going from like a concrete world to like an undefined world, and it's like you have to be a kid to understand it or something. I mean, it was really great and intriguing, like, oh, I want to go into that, I want to experience that, which was very abstract and difficult to like know what was going on. I actually felt like I was being swept into something, into the story on several occasions while reading that. It
Great.
just kind of reminds me of what you guys are talking about.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about there's actually 2 major magic systems in Sabriel. Do you want to talk about the difference between them?
I never could really grasp it.
I can get into it now if you want.
That's part of what I'm. Yeah, it was very elusive to me, but that was okay with me, because it's kind of like what you guys were saying about the worlds, or not the worlds, but the magic systems just being like open to anything at all and not really having any parameters or clear definitions. But I know that you know Sabriel really well because it was like your favorite thing when you were a kid, right? Maybe you
Mm-hmm.
read it a few times. And then also a lot of times when I'm reading, I'm like off in my own world.
I
Anyways,
see.
but I just remember having that feeling of just like being swept into something that felt really real, but was really, really abstract
Yeah,
and
it's like
very magical. So
someone
magical.
someone else knows the rules, but you don't know the rules because they don't tell them all to you at the beginning of the book. Definitely, you have to kind of learn it as you go. In the later books, once you have more experience with the characters, you do gain a greater level of fluency, especially in the charter magic. But so let's go into the two different types of magic in Sabriel. There is one that is much more loosely defined and that people don't understand as much, and there is one that is very rigidly defined. So those are two different types are going to be called free magic and charter magic. The charter being kind of like the magic that makes up the universe all around us. It's like the great code of the universe that's written in sigils and signs that if you have the right magic vision, you could really see them somehow, like the Matrix almost. You could see the sort of fabric of reality around you written out into glyphs. Charter magic is an attempt to turn that into replicable effects, like a scientist would almost. And so the Aberson, which is the sort of necromancer cleric that maintains the balance between life and death in the world of Sabriel, the Aberson has 8 bells that are kept on a bandolier across their chest, each one which has a really distinct kind of effect on the dead and sometimes on the living. But that's utilizing. So the Aberson is sort of the in-between point between the worlds of the living and the dead, the world of free magic and the world of charter magic. Because the world of the dead, necromancers and zombies and witches and all these evil people, they use the very uncontrollable, unpredictable magic called free magic. You see this dichotomy a lot, where there's one version of it that's very controlled and one version that's very wild. The version that's very controlled, you know what you're going to get, but it can't possibly be as powerful as the wild one. The wild one can do things that are way, way bigger, but no human being could possibly wield that power efficiently or effectively, and so it tends to be used by those that are kind of evil, right? Because evil people want to have more power and don't care about the consequences. So it's not strictly a good or evil based system, but it's just one of those ones where one is highly controlled and one is highly uncontrolled. And as a result, those who want more power tend to go the easy route. And they tend to be the ones that become necromancers, like Karagor in the first book, who's like the sort of big bad of that series, or of the first one at least. He's, an ancient, powerful necromancer that has used free magic to make himself, immortal, invincible, the zombie summoning lord, or whatever it is. And those that are on the good side are at a disadvantage against them because their magic, the charter magic, can't possibly be as strong as the free magic. So that's just the basic division there. And the Aberson, obviously, the 8 bells, each one has a specific replicable effect that is even written within the opening flap of some of the copies of the book. So if you want to know actually what the bells do, there is like a list of the things they do, which is the sign of a really hard magic system. Hard meaning there are concrete rules that always work the same way. Soft is on the other side. Soft means that there might be some rules somewhere that somebody knows, but the characters don't, and we can't really count on being able to replicate them. Anyway, that's just the basics of... thank you for weighing in, Carmen. I really like the Sabriel series, and it's a great dichotomy between that sort of much more controlled version of the magic and the version that is untamable, but there are always those that seek to try to tame it, and of course it always leads them to madness and ruin. But that's why the Avatar or the Aberson or these other characters that kind of act as the in-between point, they make really nice protagonists because they get to use both sides. They get to sort of see the best and worst of all the possibilities that the magic in your world offers. Okay, let's check for comments or questions before we move on. I want to maybe start thinking of some new magic systems based on... We're going to get a big list of random stuff, and then we're going to assemble magic systems based on things like objects, professions and skill sets, and things like this. So let's stop and see if do we have any questions on what we've talked about so far. I feel I'm also talking too fast, so I'm going to try to tone down the cocaine energy that I feel I often exhibit. Anyone want to speak up? Eden, go ahead.
Hey, for clarity, I did see Dan raise his hand before me, so just so you know, it would be fair for him to speak first.
Okay, thanks for that. Dan, go ahead.
Thank you. I've never understood this idea that somehow evil magic is easy to just do. Like, just because it's evil? I never understood that logic. That, oh, suddenly I could just... Raising the dead raising the dead and controlling armies is a lot easier than a simple shoot fireball spell, which is not evil. I've never understood these sorts of logics.
Let's talk about it. So, we have this idea that the evil magic is easier to use, or is it the other way around, right? Is it just that the easy thing, like in the case of Sabriel, which we were just talking about, it's not that it's based on morality, it's just that the one that leads to quicker power tends to be the one that draws evil people to it. It theoretically could be used by a responsible good person, but just it often isn't because the consequences are so dangerous, right? I think it's just in that case, it's that it's not morally dictated, it just happens to gravitate towards people that want that result. And I think a lot of the time we sort of do, just in society and culture, have this idea that the quick reward is usually, like, if it were easy to get good stuff that everybody wants, then everyone would do it, right? So we might think that there are the easy, quick way to rewards and riches are usually going to be either fraught with danger or have some kind of cost associated with it, right?
Yeah, but it's always like necromancy or demon magic. But what about just simpler stuff? Like, I don't know, simpler but easily as dangerous thing, like fire, or perhaps more disturbingly, charm magic. Someone who just uses enchantment and goes and says, "Bark, slave," and you bark because the magic tells you to.
Right.
Obey.
This is what we were talking about earlier.
It's a little bit more dangerous than a couple of demons that might just turn around and say, "Nah, die."
Sure. This is a good point. This is a sort of flaw in the thematic design of certain magic systems, which is the idea that why are some things considered bad when other things that are allegedly good could be more dangerous in the wrong hands, right? So you're right, that is a huge hole in a lot of magic systems that don't really account for this or address this question at all. I think a lot of the time the idea being that and this is also very based on where we are in the world too. Death equals evil equals bad is like a super Western world idea, whereas I think in more Eastern style magic systems you won't always see necromancy equals evil or death equals bad. We, in the sort of like world of Christendom and Catholicism and like a Puritan influenced society, I think that our relationship with death is very different. This is almost a separate topic, right? But we might be sort of more predisposed to consider evil things that are things that are already linked to negative concepts in our wider culture. Like, death is considered bad and wrong in Western culture for the most part. It's something we don't want to think about. Or
in anime, you see the demon lord is using the bad magic. It's always a demon lord or an undead guy too.
Sure, but like, the idea that demons are always
also bad somehow.
Right, but even the idea that like demons equals bad is not always true. And sometimes maybe even the word demon isn't quite even the right term for that cultural concept. Like a yokai, for instance. Is a yokai a demon? Or is it a fairy? Or is it an elemental? Or is it kind of all three? You know, so it's like, they don't always translate perfectly between cultures. But it's a good question to bring up. Like, why are certain things considered morally evil and some things considered morally good, to the extent that the magic of the world seems to support that idea? It leads to you being able to identify where are the flaws in certain magic system concepts, for sure. Any other thoughts or questions you want to share on that?
No.
Okay, thanks for bringing that up. It's a great addition to the topic. Let's hear Eden's thoughts. Go ahead, Eden.
Hey, so the thing you were talking about demons not being really demons kind of brought up something else that I was thinking about, and I was talking about it in Script Camp in the main like screenwriting chat. There's a concept in Slavic mythology, mainly Catholicism type stuff, but it is called chert, which is a demon but not. It is definitely an entity, a humanoid that lives in hell, and is tasked with torturing sinners and tempting the still living, but also they're chaotic good, for lack of a better term. They will tempt you to do the bad thing, but they will be happy for you if you choose not to.
Oh, okay. So they're rooting for you.
Because they're basically on the side of heaven. They don't want more people to go to hell. They basically just ravish in torturing the really bad ones and want the good ones to stay good. Because they get the ultimate, like, you know, reward, going to heaven and being fitted for a halo or whatever it is.
I always wondered about that.
But my question was... sorry?
You go for it. I had a different train of thought, but I'd like to hear your question.
All right. So, So, in these magic systems, I have this concept in my head, and I am slowly but surely putting it into fruition somehow. And it is this... have you ever heard of changelings? Children swapped for fey children. Yeah. So I'm toying with that concept, but in a way like they would be a cuckoo. You know, some cuckoos can actually adapt their egg color to resemble the color of the other eggs in the nest where they're laying their eggs. So I took this and I kind of made it its own in my story, where the children that would be swapped would take on resemblance of their parents, their human parents, quote unquote, and also the magic that is in them would somehow reflect the environment they are raised in.
The environment they're raised in, meaning what?
Meaning like if there's one girl who has the power to open up the Rainbow Bridge on short distances, because I don't want them to be too overpowered, because her parents were mythology geeks.
Oh, I see. So their powers are sort of themed around what their parents' lives are like, I guess, in a way?
Pretty much, or what they themselves develop a liking to if the powers manifest late enough. And there is this on the topic of necromancer, I'm so glad Dan brought it up. I have a 7-year-old Asian American little boy named Callum who can raise the dead for a minute.
Okay.
And his power is basically like he grew up in his parents were like funeral home owners or something like that. So death for him is Tuesday. He knows it's happening all the time, and it's like it's no big. He was raised there, and so like if he sees someone shot beyond recognition, and he's asked to can you please ask this nice man how that happened, he'll just go over to him and just be like, excuse me please sir, can you tell me who shot you? And this guy would just wake up like
Have you seen Pushing Daisies?
I have. That's a great show.
So it's like that? Isn't that what Ned does on Pushing Daisies? He brings people back to life for a minute to ask them how they died?
Well, he can re-kill them as well. But I did not know I unconsciously channeled that. You're right.
I love the show. I'm not saying you can't write your thing. Obviously you can. I just wanted to make sure you had seen that as an example of how it works.
Definitely. It's a jam.
Yeah, and it has a really rigid magic system too, which a lot of fantasy shows are kind of, like the rules come and go to some extent, but the rules are kind of central to the premise of Pushing Daisies. Maybe
absolutely,
you're a big fan of the show,
I love
right?
the way they're dancing around it, like the scene of them kissing through that cellar foil. That was just, oh my heart.
Yeah, it's awesome. I realize we might be transitioning topics a little bit. I would just love to talk about Pushing Daisies.
So the question is for me, do you think that like nerfing to an extent these abilities, like little Callum being able to only raise the dead for like 20 minutes, but that window of opportunity makes it easier to potentially fix them if the wound is somehow like fixable, not in the shot beyond recognition kind, but you know.
Wait, I'm sorry. What the question was? Does
Like,
that ability work?
is the nerfing that I came up with is that sufficient, or is it like too OP?
Is it too OP or no? These are like video game terms, right? So just for those who don't know, maybe we should tell everybody what this means. So OP means
right.
meaning overpowered, right?
Yes.
Okay, and nerfing meaning to reduce the power or competence of a character?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. You especially in for balance reasons, I guess, is the connotation of nerfing, right? It means like
yeah, because I don't want them to be like straight up super people that could potentially fix the world and then go back to doing whatever they were doing previously, you know, because that is so damn easy for them.
Okay, so your question is, how do you limit this power of raising the dead to talk to them? Right?
No, if I limited it well, because for him it's just like for 20 minutes.
For 20 minutes. Oh, okay. And then after 20 minutes, what happens?
They re-die.
They die again. Okay. Unless you can fix them, you said, so you can heal them in the time that you bring them back for.
Okay. So just imagine the person has died of a heart attack. Okay. And Callum reanimates them. But their heart isn't beating. They are just capable of, they're just basically a zombie. But in that 20-minute window of opportunity, you incorporate chest compressions and stuff like that, and the person comes back because their brain isn't dead yet.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. I mean, it's almost like the Princess Bride thing, where it's like, he's not dead, he's mostly dead. What is it that he says?
Yeah.
I would think that wouldn't work after a certain amount of time, right? So if somebody had a heart attack 50 years ago, then you probably couldn't do it the same way, right?
This is also another thing. He can only reanimate the recently dead.
The recently dead. Okay. So, but I guess the recently dead would be the ones who had the greatest chance to potentially save. So there are two big... I mean, that's a pretty powerful aspect of it. The fact that you could save somebody in addition to just bring them back temporarily. And have them be totally back to normal and live a normal human health span? Or would it be like Pet Cemetery?
Or maybe it could be like a second step to his powers, because he's, like I said, he's 7, he's still young. So maybe there's like steps to the powers. What do you think?
Steps as in you gain more abilities over time?
Yes.
You could do it. I mean, for a longer series, it would especially work. If it's just one story, it's complicated enough as it is, probably. So you may not need to add more. Like, you already have a lot of rules. You may not need to add more.
I would definitely make that into a series, because there is so many characters in my head just popping up as we speak, like daisies. So
yeah. Fantasy series is probably the right medium for that then, because you can really include a lot of ideas in one work, as opposed to a movie or even a pilot, which is so short and needs to limit much more.
Okay.
Anyway,
thank you. That helps.
I don't even know if I addressed your question or your problem, but
my question is it too much? Is it overpowered? But I kind of answered myself in this little rap session. It happens a lot, but thank you. You were there to witness it, and you helped.
Okay. Just to answer the question, is it overpowered? The question is always like, compared to what, right? Like, what are you trying to balance it with? And in most cases, it like, your characters can just be powerful. It's fine to have a powerful character in a story.
Like, balancing with... There's a dude who can talk to machines. And to any kind of machinery. So if someone has a gun pointed at him, and he just says, that gun doesn't work anymore. And it doesn't.
Oh, so it's more than just talking to them. It's actually controlling machines through verbal commands?
He can basically ask them nicely to please don't work for this particular instance, but if it's a computer, then he has to talk to it. But if it's a mechanical thing, like a pistol or something, or a Luger or whatever, I don't know what kinds of pistols there are. That's the end of my knowledge.
Luger is indeed that's a pistol.
If it's like this kind of mechanic or like clockwork or something like that, he can just say that doesn't work anymore, or it works now.
Okay, I see what
but in case of like smart things, smart quote unquote, like a smart light bulb or a mobile phone, then he would have to actually ask it and communicate.
So I think that if your characters have distinct but significant powers like that, I don't think those are too unbalanced or anything else, because they have completely different effects, and they can be used in many different ways. So I think that balance isn't super important unless you're making a video game or a tabletop game or something where all the choices have to all the players have to feel like they're getting equal stuff out of the choice, like they've made equally valid choices. But in terms of books and movies and shows, I think balance almost doesn't quite matter unless it's something like, well, you were designing a war between two factions and we need to believe that they're at a stalemate or something like that, in which case, okay, then they have to be basically balanced, or else the story world wouldn't make any sense anymore. But in your case, I would say just go for it. Yeah, like include a bunch. If it's a world like X-Men where characters have completely random powers that could do almost anything, then it can kind of all come out in the wash in that sort of comic book style of like very high fantasy storytelling. So I think you're probably fine.
I don't think I'm brave enough for high fantasy, but thank you for the confidence boost.
Sure. I mean, yeah, like any story that has either multiple magic systems or multiple different sort of alternate species of elves and dwarves and things, often people will sort of call that high fantasy. There's not really one definition of exactly what high fantasy is, but that is how most people
this is
define it.
mainly concerning with the Feywild and the children that are basically human but with X-Men type powers.
I see. Yes, the changeling abilities. I gotcha.
Yes.
Cool.
So yeah.
Thank you for the questions and thoughts. Okay, so, and thank you everybody who's contributed so far. So, we are talking magic systems, and we're at about at the halfway mark here, so at this point we maybe want to transition into more of a workshop-style session. So let's just go over, before I call for volunteers and things like this, let's just go over some of the very basics, and then what we're going to do is, I'm going to get a big list of objects and skills and things like that, and then we will design magic systems based on those. Okay, so let's start by just going over some of the major points and things that we should just all be on the same page about before we get into the workshop. So we talked about what is... I don't think we defined that word, just what is magic. In this case, we're going to talk about magic as being the supernatural forces that your characters in stories have the ability to utilize, usually in an effort to pursue their goals and to achieve their character arcs, right? So it's going to be not impossible things that happen in stories, that will never be possible. That's the difference between fantasy and sci-fi, is that fantasy elements are not possible now and will never be, whereas speculative or sci-fi is going to be stuff that maybe one day will be possible. I understand we can't always exactly know, and what at one point might be considered fantasy might later be considered sci-fi, but for the most part, the idea is that magic is impossible things that happen in stories, usually that either characters will have access to or will be able to interact with in some sort of meaningful way in the narrative. But then again, it's theoretically possible that in your story there was magic that created the world that is no longer accessible, or something like that. In any case, impossible things that happen in stories. Are there always rules that go with magic? No, not super strict ones, but when there are, we call it a magic system. Do you need one? No, your story doesn't have to have magic, first of all. And if it does, it could use such a unknowable type of magic that we never even get to find out the basics of how it works. That's fine too. We talked about magical dichotomies, that dichotomy of good versus evil, or different perceptions of magic from young versus old, or animals versus humans is another sort of dichotomy. The natural versus the unnatural is a really common dichotomy to play off of in magic system design. We could get into well springs and things like that, but let me ask Becky what your thoughts are, because you just raised your hand. Go ahead, Becky.
Yeah, I was just going to briefly talk about the kind of sci-fi fantasy where they intertwine, because obviously while there is a thing about, you know, sci-fi being things that plausibly could happen in the future, like Star Trek teleportation or things like that. Mm-hmm. Obviously there's also a lot of like the fantasy and sci-fi crossover. So for example, in mine, I have an alien species that the kids can communicate with. No one else can hear it, and it's pure energy. Now, I've been told by astrobiologists that I had a conversation with one that's not, it wouldn't be a species like that. So that's pure fantasy. So am I now in that realm of, even though I'm doing sci-fi, like it's sci-fi fantasy, it's a crossover?
Well, basically, yeah. I mean, if you could find even one shred of, like, theoretically, maybe in some distant world, it kind of almost maybe could work like this, then you can always call it sci-fi if you want to. If there's nothing you can point to like that, then it is fantasy. But then again, sci-fi readers don't mind that much if there's a little bit of fantasy mixed in, as long as it feels like maybe there is an explanation in the world, even though we'll never learn it.
Right, yeah. It's just a species that's pure energy, so it feels like a sci-fi concept.
Right. And they're psychic, right?
Yeah, they can communicate. They're like a hive mind.
But they use, I guess we would call them psionics, in order to communicate mentally with people that are far away, like telepathy.
Yeah, but it's with a certain frequency that only the kids can hear, because they're the ones who have got that frequency. They can hear that frequency. You know, like how kids can hear things that adults can't.
Oh, wait, so you're saying they're actually hearing it with their ears?
I wasn't sure. That's what I was thinking about it being. Yeah, that it's kind of this. So one of the characters can actually communicate with it, although he doesn't know yet. That's because he's got it in him. It saved him when he was a baby. But he's effectively part of the hive mind, even though he's human.
Oh, okay. So he's not hearing it with his ears. He would hear it in his mind.
Our girl, to begin with, can hear it crying. And eventually it gets into her, with her ears.
But yeah,
eventually it actually gets...
perceive it mentally, I see.
Yeah, and eventually it gets into her bloodstream, and that's where... Because it's a hive mind, so it's pure electricity. It's kind of like a tree. You got this main, like, mind thing that is, like, at the centre, like the roots. And then the energy that's being harvested are like its leaves, so it's part of the hive mind, but as it's cut off, it's like then disconnected from the hive mind.
Right. So as she goes from perceiving it one way to actually perceiving it psychically, you probably want to mark that with like a pretty clear difference. Like now, when I heard the voice, it was coming from everywhere, all like at the same time, that sort of thing. Because I hope you see what I'm saying here. If the way that she perceives it changes drastically, then that's something in a book that we could really showcase and like get more to the internal perception or response of the character to that. Whereas in a movie, we just watch them go like, "Huh, who's there?" Right, that sort of thing.
Right. Yeah. Maybe I'll get rid of the hearing with the ears thing then and just have it in her head.
Yeah, if it's just doing that from the beginning, then I guess you'll just have to make sure you're not setting or contradicting any rules. Like, can it contact? If it's telepathy from the beginning, then I don't even know if it would need to be speaking on any kind of frequency. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you might need to...
Then I suppose...
Go ahead.
My only question then is, or maybe it doesn't need to be explained, but why specifically does it only contact the children?
Good question.
The only two children on the base.
Yeah, I mean, we talked earlier even about this idea that kids and adults perceive the magic, or they can see more than adults can, or can perceive more than adults can. You can always come up with some, if you wanted to come up with some explanation. When you get older, you lose the ability to access this. Or it could be that kids are just easier to contact, or they're more receptive to it, or adults subconsciously block it out, or something like that.
Yeah.
I think we already have this. Magic systems are really nice when they touch on something that we already sort of feel is true. Like that idea that, kids perceive more. Kids, like, see the world more than adults can, or see it in a different way. Magic systems are often at their best when they're able to take those real sort of feelings and transmute them into rules and effects.
Yeah. I mean, I want to keep this book as, if it is sci-fi, soft sci-fi, it's written for kids, so it's got to be more, it's got to be kind of more, I don't have to explain every bit of technology,
Exactly.
I don't explain most of it. I mean, Star Wars, lightsabers, not really explained how they actually work.
Well, there's a crystal, and the light goes through the crystal or something? Yeah, it's like...
Yeah.
But is it based on Tabana gas, like the blasters are? I don't think so. So, like, lightsabers don't seem to run out of fuel. So, like, I guess theoretically the crystals just work forever. Like, yeah, they don't really bother going that deep into it. It's like, yeah, there's a crystal with a color, and the color connotes your allegiance in some way, but beyond that doesn't do much.
And Star Wars was meant to be like the epitome of sci-fi fantasy.
Yeah.
You know, he wanted to take the fantastical and put it in space.
Right. It's also one of those series that starts as a movie, and so it almost like, it's rare when it comes to big sci-fi or fantasy franchise for it to start as the movie. So the world building kind of worked in reverse, where it's like, okay, here's a bunch of cool stuff, and then the later movies and also books and other things like that are forced to come up with rules and systems to justify the stuff that we already saw in the movie that was just picked because it was cool. Like, you can guarantee that to begin with it was like, well, the bad guys have red lightsabers, the good guys have blue lightsabers. Why? What do you mean, why? It looks awesome.
And then Samuel L. Jackson came along and went, I want mine to be purple.
Yep. And that always throws a wrench in the gears if somebody can just... Like, Rule of Cool does throw a wrench in the gears sometimes in Magic System design. But sometimes it's part of the fun, and, like, we were never watching it because it had some really thought-out technical explanation for everything.
No.
So that's why you have to kind of be aware, like, your age group that you're writing for really matters, and, like, the type of story that you're writing affects the choices you make in Magic System design. Because, simply put, some audiences just don't care about certain stuff. Like, some audiences would rather focus on a different aspect of it.
Personally, I hate hard magic systems, hard fantasy, hard sci-fi. I really hate it. My husband loves Dune, I hate it. Whereas I'm more of the, let's go completely speculative.
Mm-hmm.
I love Harry Potter. There's a reason for the magic in the sense that there's rules and how it works. There's no, like, you know that some kids have magical parents, but then some kids are just born with magic and there's no reason why. Like, do you know what I mean? They just are. Like, Hermione is just a muggle born.
It's kind of arbitrary.
With magic, and and that's what I like. We don't have, because that opens it up to anyone can be magical.
Yeah.
That's part of the fun of it.
Right. And that's also a plot point in Harry Potter. It's like, some people are just born without it, and some people are just you just have it or you don't. And that can that factors into the world building as well. Like the fact that some wizards are just defective or whatever, and some muggles end up having a little extra talent that they wouldn't.
Yeah. Like
they could be a wizard if they were just trained or whatever.
I'm still waiting for my letter to Hogwarts.
Yeah, aren't we all? Thanks for the question, Becky. I have one more question to take, then we'll move into the workshop part. Let's hear Mario. Mario.
Is this workshop or questions?
We'll take one more question, and then we'll go into designing a new system from scratch.
Okay, so it's basic. I like to base my questions on the previous three. People probably forgot them, but they all center around the same theme of what necessarily makes a magic system better than the others. If we had to boil down those three questions, and I feel, and I've written in the chat, is that it's audience based, what you just mentioned before. So if it's a child, you sort of want to do it stage by stage, and if an adult, they're willing to accept more up front, because their expectations and maturity of like themes kind of expands, so that it could be more violent per se, as an example. And so I feel like the best criteria would be like the audience, and so like my question is, what is the if you had to boil it down to 3 rules to compare 2 magic systems, not 3 rules, any rules, arbitrary, what is the plausibility criteria test to compare 2 magic systems?
Sure. So I guess
if I was an author and I invented 2 magic systems, what would be the quantitative analysis between the 2?
Sure. Okay. So if just boil a magic system down to 3 rules or 3 principles, we have
for comparing, like, if I had to choose between 2 magic systems to write about, right? And I want to focus. It's a short story. I don't have that many words. What would be the criteria? It doesn't have to be 3. It could just be whatever you're thinking about. This is my question that I posed to the group, to you, what's your criteria for the better magic system?
Okay, so the 3 criteria I would look at would be, first of all, would simply be abilities. What can the magic do when the characters use it? The next one would be limitations. What can it specifically not do? And the third one is cost and consequences. So that would be, what does it take from you to use it? What does it, what price do you have to pay to use it? Who's allowed to use it? Things like that. If you practice it, are you going to be considered a witch? That's a big drawback or consequence. Things like that. So I think that's just the sort of like basic triangle of what can it do, what can it not do, and what will happen if someone does use it. What are going to be the continued effects or consequences of its use?
But if two magic systems had all else equal, but like if all you did this criteria for both magic systems, like how would one be better than the other? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, how would one be better than another?
Better to include in a story, or better for the character?
Yeah, better to include in your story. If you had to choose one, include one into a story. Yeah, two magic systems, one based on blood and one based on fingernails.
Okay. Well, it depends what kind of story you're trying to tell. You mentioned the audience or like the age demographic. That affects the choices that you make there for sure. But in choosing which magic suit to include in your story, I would look more in terms of like complexity as being one of the main defining factors. So if we're looking at this from an author's point of view, not from the character's point of view, then you want to pick something that's only as complex as it needs to be. You don't want to pick something that has more rules that will not be used, for instance, or rules that your characters have no way of ever learning or accessing or understanding, or a system that like your characters can't even fully grasp, so as they use it, they still don't get it. Like, those things can kind of get in your way and trip you up as you try to write those stories. So complexity versus simplicity would be the first thing I would look at as the author. The second thing would be fun. How fun and interesting is it? Is it just cool to look at? Is it like something that has a wish fulfillment aspect that's like, I wish I could do this? Or it would be cool to live in a world where this was possible? Or I've always wanted to see that monster or be able to use that effect or something like that. So just the sheer entertaining quality of the magic kind of tells us how would you want to choose which one to use for your story, because stories are entertainment before almost anything else. And then if we had to pick one more thing, I guess it would have to be that we're going to pick one from the earlier list I gave you, and it's going to be the cost and consequences, because those can make really interesting story choices. They can limit your characters, and they can find ways to like draw out the theme of a story. For instance, if the story is about the character needs to learn magic to solve a problem, the theme of the story or the dramatic argument of the story might manifest in, well, what did the character have to give up to do that, right? If you have to commit a human sacrifice every time you cast a spell, it's going to be a much darker tone of story, and it's going to present a certain type of character arc.
So if I had to like boil it down, all three criteria, almost like what best immerses the reader into the character. So because the character will have to, the constraints are there so that the reader thinks about what to do. So that's immersion. Right, and like all the other criteria that you mentioned, it's basically centered around reader immersion.
Yeah,
so
the
that's
reader
the
experience for sure.
core abstract theme of magic. If it doesn't immerse the reader, then it's useless, right? So it's almost like having multiple magic systems, kind of like waters down the effect.
It can, yeah, and especially if you're writing shorter stories. It's like a short story with 5 magic systems. You won't get to use any of them that much, or see what they can do, or explore the possibilities of all of them. Whereas,
okay, thank you for your time. I'm good.
Oh, sure, great. Okay, thanks for the question. Yeah, so longer books, longer series, especially, you have the freedom to have more rules, more complexity, more systems. Whereas shorter stories, you want to err on the side of 1 or 2 cool things which can be explored in different ways. Adding more rules and adding more complexity is not inherently better. So streamlining, making sure the audience understands fully how it works, will allow you to use those abilities and magic systems in your story to solve problems the characters get into. But if the audience doesn't really understand how it works, you lose the ability to use that to solve problems because it starts to feel like cheating. Okay. Great. So any other questions before we move ahead? Okay, let's see some hands raised for volunteers. I'm not going to go in order that you raised them necessarily. I might just see how many volunteers we have and then decide how long to spend on these different activities. So go ahead and raise a hand. Thank you for raising hands, everybody. Anyone else? Keep raising them. I just want to see everyone interested. All right, we got 3. That should be totally fine. So we'll start with Becky. And let's, from the chat, Becky, we're going to get a big list of objects from people. I want to see just a bunch of items in the chat. I'm just going to start listing stuff. Grapes, ladders. Just keep posting items in the chat. I just want to see 100 different things.
Balls. Carrots.
Crocodiles. Let's stick with for inanimate objects for this one, but crocodile magic system would be funny.
Could change to crocodile clips.
Crocodile clips, yeah, okay. Maybe like a paper clip based system.
Oh, belly lint.
Oh dear. Benches, dust bunnies, cushions, lots of good options here. Let's see like 10 more things. Just throw them out there. They can be dumb. Keyboard keys. That's kind of cool. Keyboard keys almost makes me think of like Scrabble tiles, and there's definitely a magic system possibility there. That's kind of fun. Jellies. Jellymancers? Is that what you want to see? Clothespins, ribbons. Luke wants to see Jellymancers. Okay, when he volunteers, he can do that. All right, so Becky, which one do you like? I kind of like keyboard keys. Is my favorite.
I kind of like. Bear in mind that I'm coming at it from a kids' writer point of view.
That's fine.
I'm kind of like Ellie Lind.
Okay.
I think I'll make a great like chapter book magic system.
All right, if that's what we're going with, that's what we're going with. We gotta commit. Belly Lynch magic. Bellymancers? I don't know. Bellymancy? Question mark, question mark. All right. Well, trigger warning for this segment, I guess. But, so, Bellymancy. Let's think of some basics. What the heck is this? What can this do? And what would this be used for?
I think it's probably like, you know, when you read the tea leaves at the bottom of the cup.
Oh, okay. Form of divination, maybe?
Yeah.
So that would be used to predict the future?
Yeah.
Or discern hidden information? Okay, what else?
You have to drink the tea.
God. Why are you doing this to us, Mario? What did we do to you?
But of course it would be more accurate than tea leaves, so it would actually like tell you what's going to happen. So, but only this one kid can actually read it. So she's always got to try and find a way to see people's belly buttons to be able to predict, to stop them from dying.
To stop them from dying. Wait, so are you talking about you're looking into someone's belly button, or you're removing the lint?
Would be less creepy.
They're both creepy, Becky. We're in a nightmare already. So I guess you could say either way. Maybe there's a different effect for both, right?
I think it probably has to look like in people's belly buttons.
To read their fortune? Okay, so this is a form of fortune telling then. Okay, you mentioned only one kid can do it, so it's a rare skill.
Maybe he does take it out. Maybe it's like, a kind of the colour of it. Like, maybe it's not quite very, very lint, but she sees an aura of people and it comes from the belly. And it's like, she can kind of see what, she can kind of see an aura of them. Yeah, I was going to suggest the colour, Nacho. I'm like, it's the colour of it is what, like, she sees it as different colours, and therefore she gets this, like, dash of, like, if people wear low tops, sometimes the belly buttons show. So one summer, she notices that she suddenly sees this, like, different colours from people's belly buttons, and if it's, like, a darker colour, I mean, something bad's going to happen to him. It's
like the Dead Zone, almost. The Stephen King book, where he has to, if he touches somebody, then he can sort of see their secrets or their like inner thoughts and stuff like that. I believe that's how that works. Or is it that he can see how they'll die? I I might be conflating it with something else. But my thought is he sees people's dark secrets. I think that's how that works. Anyway,
Right.
So do you want to focus on the lint, or is this just a belly-based system?
I don't know, because there is a thing about like belly buttons being, it's a place where we're intimately close to our mother beforehand.
There's a kind of Care
So there
Bear
could be,
element to it, right?
yeah. So could be something to do with that. Although I really liked, Mario said this is why kids pick at their belly lint. They can actually do this. That's how they that's how they do the exams. They got all the answers in their belly lint.
God, okay. So we have to decide, I guess, if the lint is critical to this, or is the lint just an extension of the belly power that she already can do, right? Maybe it could be that, is that where the aura is stored, and therefore, if somebody has lint in their belly button, then she can read their aura? Is that right?
Yeah, I think
Yes.
it'd be that way, yeah.
Okay, so the power is in the lint, but she can perceive it from just looking at them from afar.
Yeah, she doesn't have to get close and put it out or anything. But because, like, the lint is kind of, special stuff from inside the belly.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we have the just the basic mechanics of how this works. She can visually assess the color of people's auras from afar. And what information does that provide?
I think it would actually give her insights into their minds.
Their minds.
So she can, she can see things about them. So it's not necessarily predicting the future. Now I've got a story forming. She can, so if she's trying to find out who's evil, who stole who stole everyone's dinners or whatever, I don't know, whatever kids' mystery you set up, she'll be looking for the evil one. But of course, all it takes is for you to be extra clean and be a neat freak, and she won't be able to read you.
Right. She can only tell what kind of crusty people who haven't showered are thinking, I guess.
Yeah. Or
And at the
people who don't
beach-
actually get in there and clean it.
At the beach, she'd be useless because everyone's in the water, right? So she wouldn't even be able to read anyone.
Other than those that are just sunbathing, yeah.
Right, there is those for sure. That could be a good scene. She goes to the pool. Going to the pool would be an interesting experience for her. So this is deeply silly, but we can still use it. We can still figure out the basics. So if we say the power is in the lint, she can perceive it from afar. It gives her insights into their minds. You might even think to sort of thematically link this together or make a little kind of, magic sense, and that it feels like it makes sense is, how we say somebody's like gut reaction or whatever is like what their sort of, you go with your gut is sort of like your true intention or your true thought or your first knee-jerk response to something, right? So maybe is that how we can interpret that idea that she can sort of see like what is their intention, mood, morality, or some other internal factor based off of the aura color?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was distracted a little bit by Mario saying, you need to pick at it, by the way, so it can run out. If you don't pick at it, you still need a fuel source.
Right. So yeah, we might imagine that since it is limited
I don't know.
in quantity.
I don't know,
Yeah.
because in children's books, often when there's magic, they can't control it.
Mhm.
So it is intruding into their lives. So actually, it'd be better if it's something that she doesn't control, and so it hits her. And if it hits her like this really strong wave that's an assault on all of her senses, then it would happen at the most inopportune time. The teacher big drunken teacher with a big beard belly. It sort of sticks out and she's like, oh my god, she starts having a fit in class.
Sure. So
It's
it's overwhelming to perceive the auras.
Yeah, because that is a common theme in children's books. There's a book called Charlie Changes into a Chicken, where this boy literally changes into all these animals. Ironically, never actually changes into a chicken. He changes into a spider. He can't control it, and by the end he's got to learn to control it, and it's actually a metaphor for anxiety. So that's sort of why often, you know, in adult books, you normally would have the limitations of they can't keep using the power, but in kids' books, the limitation tends to more be like, I don't want to have this.
Yeah.
And I can't control it. That tends to be the.
That makes a great cost or consequence that it's just not nice to use or to have, and so there's the only limiting factor is your tolerance for it.
Yeah.
So we have I think we have our main. Go ahead.
Then she has to. Oh, and Mario said there's also a stigma. I mean, it's not a great ability.
Okay, yeah. If people know about that you're the belly wizard or whatever, then they might look at you weird.
He says, yeah, that weirdo is staring at my belly again.
So I think we have the basics. We have the ability, limitation, and cost and consequence, don't we? We have the ability, which we might call the gut check. Gives her insights as to what people are thinking, their true intentions are. We have the limitation, the power is in the lint. No lint equals no psychic impression. And we have the cost and consequence, which is the more she uses it, it becomes more overwhelming. And the factor to stop her using it all the time is really just she doesn't want to. It's intrusive and unpleasant.
Well, yeah, because it's that whole, you know, where you wish you could, you know, where people say, oh, I wish I could hear other people's thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you get that wish, actually maybe you didn't want it.
Right, exactly.
So, you know, she says, oh, are you coming to my party tonight? And her friend's like, oh, no, I'm really busy. I've got to go see someone. And
her eyes
her belly
just drifting
red.
down to the belly. Her friends are like, no, stop it.
Yeah.
I can see. Eyes up here. Eyes up here.
Yeah.
Hello.
It's got to be able to go through clothing.
Oh, well, yeah, I guess if it can't, then she's going to be lifting up people's shirts like a real freak, isn't she?
Yeah.
That would be a cost and consequence, too. It's socially unavailable to you a lot of the time.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else for Bellymancy or a name for the magic besides Bellymancy that you want to give this one?
Yeah, I don't think it should be Bellymancy because that doesn't sound very kid-friendly.
Okay. What do you want to call it?
Oh, I have no idea.
We can come back to you. When you think of it, I can add it to the top of this one.
It actually says, does belly jewelry improve the magic?
Oh, good question. Or does it hinder it? Maybe if it's like a jewel, it might focus it, right?
Which would be why one of the teachers is extra strong. And that's the one that she thinks is guilty, is extra strong, and it's not. It's just that the
not guilty.
The
She's
teacher's
just
got a belly
she's just
ring.
a belly dancer. Yeah. She's not a murderer. She's just a dancer. All right. I think we have to wrap up this one. But thank you for designing this system with me, and let us know the title.
I'm going to use this in a middle grade, in a younger middle grade book. This would be aimed at like 8-9-year-olds. I think that's the kind of humor that this speaks of.
Yeah, for sure. That's a freebie. It's all yours. Not just as umbilical intimacy. There you go. Thanks, Becky. All right. Let's get more hands raised. Who else wants to do one? We have half an hour. I see one hand raised. Eden, do you want to start? And if I don't call you right away, keep your hands raised so I can see who wants to go next. That'll just be like our cue. I see Michelle and Mario, so we can call you guys after. Let's start with Eden. Hi, Eden.
I absolutely conceptually love it. So
which one?
I want
a
challenge. You pick one.
Oh, I pick one. Okay. Let's look at this big list. I see Michelle gave us spoons. Let's do a spoon one. All right.
Spoons.
Yeah.
Okay. So, let's limit this to silverware strictly.
Okay, we can just say silverware if spoons is too limiting.
No. They can stay spoons, but the limitation is silver.
Oh, as in only no plastic spoons.
Yes.
Okay, silver only. Silverware only.
And the more precious the metal, the stronger the ability.
Okay.
It would be a. I don't I don't want to go for the obvious spoon bending thing, but I am thinking right now probably a type of combat.
Okay.
Where the spoon, I am thinking concave, convex, and trying to get my head around which is which. Convex is the outpointing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the convex part will have to hit the opponent.
So we're using them as weapons.
Yes.
Okay.
And if it hits like a shoulder or a knee, it could temporarily paralyze that appendage.
Okay.
And if it hits the center of the forehead, like where the third eye would be, that is knockout. And
All right.
in this world, I'm thinking it's kind of like wrestling.
In what way?
Like, you can use it for actual fighting, but people watch it on TV and get really excited about the new spoon. What would I call it? Spooning sounds so weird.
The new like spoon gladiators on the scene or whatever.
What's another word for spoon?
Another word for spoon.
I'm thinking all of the languages that I have in my head, like where I could possibly get a better word. I mean, in Czech it's called lžíce.
Okay.
But I don't think anybody would be able to say it because there's too many consonants clamped together.
What if we can come back to the names and specifically.
Lžička, lžíky.
Okay.
It could be called lžíky.
That's the name of the system?
Of the fighting.
Of the fighting, okay.
Of the fighting style.
Fighting style. I hope I spelled that right. I definitely did not spell that right.
I pulled the word out of my... And you spelled it the same that I did.
Oh, good. Okay. So we got a fighting style. So let's ask who's actually using this. I think you're sort of saying it's like almost it's like a combat sport in this world, right? So professional practitioners would be athletes.
Athletes, definitely, men and women equally. And you know how sumo is for specifically for larger body types? I'm thinking that this would be specifically for the petite.
Okay, so it doesn't require a lot of strength to use. It's more based on precision and dexterity.
Yes, and there would be a lot of athleticism involved in there, and they would be armed like in the official combat scenario in the wrestling ring of this. They would be armed with a specific number of spoons.
Okay.
You know, like the spoon theory, where you have a specific number of spoons.
I have not heard that. No, is that some math concept? Spoon theory?
It's a common thing in people with ADHD. They say you have a certain number of spoons that is how many tasks you can do in a day.
Oh, I've never heard that. Interesting. Okay.
It's also prevalent for people like me with fatigue. I actually came first for people with physical disabilities and fatigue but it's good for ADHD as well because they can only do a certain amount. For me, it's about I have a choice. I can either get dressed or I can write for an hour. So if I just don't bother getting dressed and I write in my nightie, I can get more work done because I have a choice. It's that kind of thing. You know, I can have a shower. If I have a shower, I don't have the energy to change the bed sheets. So what am I going to do today? And you can borrow spoons from tomorrow. That means tomorrow you have less spoons, you have less energy. So it's kind of a way of explaining to people who don't have chronic fatigue or ADHD or other limiting factors what it means to be able to do stuff during the day.
Okay, thanks for the explanation. I feel it does almost... you could base the system around that concept, but the combat sport angle of it
I was actually thinking
is it
that
compatible?
you could... you can make it so every thonk of the spoon takes a little bit of the energy out of the person who is wielding the spoon.
Who's wielding?
And therefore,
not the person you're hitting.
No.
Not okay. So it takes it from you, so
It
extracts energy
is a
from
quid
yourself.
pro quo system. So the fighter, even if they win, is very tired at the end, and they have to choose which parts of their opponent they're going to be hitting, because if you hit a lot of places, then you're going to be as tired as tired enough to knock yourself out, basically, and therefore you would not win the combat.
Okay, great. I think we have some abilities, limitations, and costs and consequences. Our cost and consequence is that it's draining to even use it. So each time that you land a hit with one of these magic spoons, then you are draining your own energy. Why can't I spell the word consequences? Okay.
That's the thing. The spoons aren't magic. The person is.
Oh, so the spoon is a conduit for the person's
yes, it is. It is
magic?
like a concentration of the magic.
Okay.
And that's why you have to why you have to hit it with the ball of the spoon, because that's where the magic concentrates, and you have to hold it by the handle and go bong.
So landing hit with the spoon drains your natural magic. So abilities are causes instant numbness or unconsciousness. Is that right?
Numbness in limbs and unconsciousness when hit in the center of the forehead.
Okay.
That kind of came from the whole spoon bending thing, because the third eye is in the center of your forehead. You know, gotta put that one in.
Can it kill someone?
I mean, yes, but it would always also kill the person delivering the hit.
Okay, can't kill someone without killing the wielder. That's a big limitation.
Kung spoon, I love it.
Kung spoon. Okay, what happens when people just eat using spoons in this world?
You have to consciously conjure the power. That's why I said this power comes from the person, not the spoon.
Okay, so
and that was inspired by the GIF that Luke posted, because it's not the spoon that's bending, it's you actually.
Ah, I see. So what you are saying is the spoon is like a wand, essentially, then in that case, which is a focus.
Pretty much, yeah.
Or a non-consumed material component. And in this case, you're not required to exert that power as you use the spoon. It just enables you to do that.
Yeah, and it is very specifically a non blood drawing sport.
Right, that's true, because it's
and
blunt.
I'm thinking now that I'm thinking about the whole concentration of energy, the fork wielders.
Oh, wait to the sequel.
They draw blood.
The last cutlery bender needs to unite all of the different pieces of cutlery. And I mean, just imagine the spork. That would be a good spork wielder. Would be quite a mysterious ninja that is encountered by the heroes in episode 3.
Oh, he could do both.
That's truly the avatar of this world.
Awesome.
That's the Aberson. So we have. Do you have a name for the system? The spoon. You gave us a name for the combat. The combat is Lejiki.
You know what? I'm changing it to spoon, Kung spoon, because that's just.
All right, Kung spoon. Great. In a world.
I mean, I would get canceled by so many people for racial insensitivity, but like, can you pass up an opportunity like this?
I think it's funny. Thank you for contributing. We can add this to the list next to.
And the other one would be Kung fork.
Belly powers. Belly powers or spoon or fork magic. In the world of Lejiki, you either fight with cutlery or you die. Let's add this to the list up here. We're gonna make a definitive. We're gonna make us the WordCamp role-playing tabletop role-playing game based on only these powers. Abilities, limitations. There we go.
I'm taking Kung spoon to my next D&D campaign. That one's mine.
It's all yours. Thank you for making this system with us, Eden.
Thank you for having me.
We've got a couple more hands raised. Michelle.
Hey, how are y'all doing?
Hey, Michelle, doing good.
Good.
Do you want to pick an object from the list? If you scroll up in the chat, you'll see a bunch of objects people posted.
Well, okay, can I pick something of mine?
Sure.
Okay, well, I like stairs. I also like, let's see, what else did I pick? I think I had a scarf. Keys. I like, stairs and keys.
Which one? Let's
Can
pick
I
one.
have, oh, I have to pick
Just
one?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to say stairs because that may make things more challenging because not every place has stairs.
Yeah, I like this. A stairs-based system sounds very cool. Let's get into it.
Okay.
All right.
So go ahead. Or do you want me to say something?
So either you can just give me all your thoughts and brainstorming right off the bat, or I can ask you questions, however you'd prefer to do it.
Go ahead and ask me questions.
Okay, so when you hear stairs-based magic system, what immediately comes to your head? Like, just do you see any people using stairs to travel through time, or to go, going up the stairs means you advance through time, going downstairs makes you go backwards, something like that? Does any kind of effect or like cool thing just jump to mind?
That's why I was thinking going up stairs means to go forward in time, but not like, moving through time like we normally do, but you can like skip a minute, skip a day, skip an hours, skip years. So maybe like one skip a stair means to skip a day. So you maybe can't go through minutes, but you could skip a day, which might be more beneficial, and skip 2 stairs means to skip 2 days, but I don't know how most people, unless they're really tall, can skip like a week,
Right.
I did have a brother-in-law who was 6'8", and he could literally, our stairs were literally 28 stairs, and he could go up the stairs in 2 steps.
Okay, yeah, so maybe if we're thinking that it's a way to move forwards or backwards in time, then somebody could go faster or slower, depending on how many stairs they wanted to jump over. Any other things it could do besides... Oh, go ahead.
Or you could jump. Like I was a gymnast. I'm 4'9", and a standing jump, I could literally jump 6 feet because I was very powerful. And I could literally jump from the top of my stairs almost to the bottom, and my mother used to get on me about that. You're going to kill yourself. No, I'm not, Mom. Watch me do a cartwheel down the stairs. Like, no, don't do that. But if you're really tall, like my former brother-in-law, that he died. My sister and he were married until the day he died. So anyway, so maybe you're like him, and you're 6'8", and you can walk up a flight of stairs, and in two steps, or you could go down the flight of stairs in 2 steps, because you're super long, or you're like me, you could jump down the stairs,
Any other ideas for what it could do besides time travel?
Well, let's see. Maybe you could also move through different cultures. If you step on like the left side of the stairs, you could go to the west of your planet or your country, depending on how far you moved. And the east, you could go. If you move to the right, you could go to the east of your planet, or you could go, by going straight up, north, you could go to the north of your planet, but then you'd have to like maybe go back down one to go to the south, but you'd be going back in time unless, I don't know, you ran around the different stairs or something and landed on the same stair to go to the south, so maybe something kind of convoluted like that.
Okay, teleportation kind of stuff. So using the stairs to jump around the world.
Yeah, but you would have to maybe if you intentionally ran around the different stairs to go to at the same time, if you but you wanted to go to the south of your planet, let's say in our planet you wanted to go to Argentina, or Chile, then you would just have to like run around the same stair and then like decide you're going to end up on the south of that stair. So you could go to the south of the planet, or you wanted to go to southern Africa, except
Okay.
for example.
How
So
about
yeah,
how about getting older or younger?
well, I don't know. I'm thinking that I'm thinking that only people who have the ability to use the stairs um, can use it, and that you could use any staircase anywhere, but you have to use a staircase, and that since you have this ability, that maybe you don't age as much. Like if I had that, I might decide that I want to go back 30 years, to where I'm 30 again.
Okay. So let's pick one thing. Which one do you like the best? Do you like time travel, teleportation, or the aging or getting younger thing?
Well, I kind of like teleportation. We have to choose one, huh?
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, so I kind of like teleportation the best, because that seems like if if this whole if the point of all this was to like maybe stop a criminal, or which I think would be like the best thing to do, that it might be more beneficial for you to be able to like go a week in time, or go back a week in time.
Oh, wait. Okay, so let's pick one thing it can do. Are we doing teleportation or are we doing time travel?
Um, I'm thinking, oh, teleportation.
Teleportation.
Well,
Okay.
I don't know. Let's let the group decide.
Let the group decide. Okay, what do you guys think? What should the stairs be able to do in our magic system? Becky says teleport. Mario says teleport. Let's have one more person weigh in. The deciding vote. Okay, teleporting. That's what we're going with then. So, in this case, we might ask, is it practitioners of this magic who can access any staircase? Maybe can they jump between staircases? That would kind of make sense as to like where you're going to show up, right? Or it could be that there are specific staircases at different points around the world. Like maybe there's 4 houses on the north, the south, the east, and west parts of the world. You have like one in China, one in the US, one in Antarctica, like you have kind of 4 central locations. And then people could travel between those staircases. Maybe you go down far enough, you end up walking out in South America, for instance, something like that. What do you think? What are your thoughts?
Mine, I think that's a great idea. But the problem is, if you're in, let's just say that you're in LA where you are, and you want to end up in Argentina, but well, I'm sorry, not Argentina. You want to go. Let's say you want to go to see the pyramids, but you end up in China, but there isn't a staircase in Egypt. Well, it might be kind of difficult, you know. So I don't know. Maybe there needs to be a staircase. Maybe any staircase. You can utilize any staircase, since you're the magical user, and that only people who are maybe gifted with the magic or born with the magic, or maybe both. Maybe it's like in Harry Potter, where you can be born with it, or you could be. Let's not use Muggle, because that's J.K. Rowling's term. Just like a non-charmed person, or charmless person. But anybody who's born into it or gifted with it can use any staircase. So,
to do what?
To teleport.
To teleport where?
Anywhere you want.
Anywhere they want.
I'd say. But if you want to go to, like, it might be easier if you want to go to China, to use the staircases in China,
Wait,
but
so
I'm just.
If you can teleport anywhere, why does the staircase where you're going even matter?
Well, you're right about that. Okay, well, we need some limits to this magic. And I was thinking that the limits to the magic are that Well, what if you don't have a staircase and you really need it? What are you going to do? Well, you got
Build
to
one.
go find. Well, but I say go find one is cheaper, or and easier to go find one because
Mhm.
Depending upon where you live, it might not be too hard to find a staircase.
Okay, so for the purposes of just setting the rules in place, then should we say practitioners, if they have the magic gene or whatever, can utilize any staircase to teleport to any other staircase?
Right, and then maybe people who are gifted the magic are limited in their magic, so they can only use particular staircases.
Is it only ones you've seen before or something like that, or only ones that you know you for sure are there, maybe we could say?
Yeah, ones that we know for sure are there. So like if you're in New York and you don't and maybe there's a magical app you get to download and you see that there's only one staircase in all of New York, and it's 5 miles away and you need to make it in the next 2 minutes, then well, sorry, you're out of luck.
I see. Okay, so this is a good limitation, so we can only access staircases that we know about. And often in
Right.
teleport-based systems, if you can try to push the limits of it, and for instance, you can be like, I'm pretty sure that there's a staircase in this place, but then if you make a mistake, sometimes you teleport yourself into a wall and you're stuck forever, or you
Right.
could teleport yourself underground, or you could you
Right.
could teleport yourself in the sky by accident and die, or something like that. Do you like that
Right.
idea, or what do you think the costs or consequences might be? They could be that, or it could be something else.
Those are good cost consequences. I say that why why don't we have genetic magic users be rare, like maybe only 1 in 50, okay?
Okay.
And people who are gifted the ability, maybe there's 2 ways you're gifted the ability: being able to learn the language that's exceedingly difficult, okay? Or
A
you
language.
can, there's let's say there's a magic language you can learn that's very, very difficult, or you can maybe give a finger or a toe.
Whoa,
Or
okay. To do what?
or go bald in a society that hates bald people.
Okay.
You
And
know?
this would be like a shortcut to being able to use it?
Well, if you are not a genetic magic user, so genetic magic users are only 1 in like 50 or maybe 1 in 100. Okay,
Oh,
so they're
I see.
very, very rare, coming from like a certain line of families. Or you could get this gift by learning the exceedingly difficult language, or you have to or maybe you give up 5 years of your life. You can learn the language in 2 years, or you can take 5 years off of your life. That's automatically taken off. So when you get to be
Alright.
75, 80, you die at 75.
Got it. Okay. I think we've got, or maybe adding too many rules at this point, but we've got a
Oh,
solid
I'm
foundation.
sorry.
That's okay. So we've got a solid foundation, though. Maybe you can think of a name for it, the magic, if you want to. But let's just recap
Sure.
the basics first. I'll give you a second to think about it if you
Okay,
want.
go ahead.
So basics, abilities, practitioners, if they have the right gene, can use staircases to teleport to any other staircase that they know about. The limitations are they can only do staircases they know about, and very rarely can people actually do this. It's limited in terms of who actually has the ability to access this. And the cost and consequences are just the potential mishaps and risks of an erroneous teleport. But besides that, we haven't really outlined any other costs. But that's fine for now. We can just leave it as is. You can do some more brainstorming. Do you have any ideas for the name?
Stairmancy.
Stairmancy? Okay. Stair Mastery, maybe? Isn't a Stairmaster a thing?
Stairmastery. Yeah, that's Stairmaster. Well, you're a Stairmancer, and it's Stairmastery. That's great.
Yeah, and that way also you'd get a heck of a workout going up and down all the stairs, so it kind of makes sense. A Stairmaster is a workout machine.
Maybe you have to work out on stairs before you become good enough to use it. Maybe if you're a genetic user, as a kid, your parents say you have not practiced your stairmancery. I want you to go run those stairs for the next hour. You're like, Mom, I don't want to do that. I'm so tired. That's right. You're gonna be tired because
You want to be a wizard, you work out those glutes and those,
right.
like work out.
Exactly. That's right. You want to be a stairmaster, that you got to work that out. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Okay.
This is super fun.
Yeah, a lot of creative choices. Thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome.
So we have time for one more. I see Mario again. Ready to make our last system with us, Mario?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay, so I'm picking clothespin, right?
Okay.
I'm gonna base this on the 3 laws of Brandon Sanderson.
Okay.
So we already established that the reader's understanding of the magic is proportional to the solutions. So I'm gonna pick pinching. So everyone understands pinching, right? You can pinch people, you can pinch the air, but because clothespins is like cheap and stuff, right? And you need a lot of them to actually affect the kind of world. So if let's say a person can see certain spots in the air around them, and they would pinch it. And if they pinch the right spots, right, they can affect the natural phenomena around them. Like if they want to turn invisible, they put a sheet over themselves and they pinch certain parts of the sheet so that the light can pass through. So they're affecting the physical properties of that material.
Okay, so of the material that they're clipping it to, or are you saying they're detecting sort of like nodes in the air that they're clipping onto?
That's the future, when they get more powerful. They can actually pinch the air. But,
okay.
But the first level is just material, because that's the easiest thing. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So a pincher can... What are we doing with the clothespins? Give me an example of using the magic.
I gave in order to... It's not purely invisible, it's just changing the properties of material. That's the first level.
Okay.
So you can actually make a almost invisible... let's say it's dark outside, you can make it so it's almost transparent. It's not full invisibility, but sort of half invisibility if people aren't paying attention.
Okay, so
as you get more powerful, you understand. As you get more powerful and educated about physics and stuff, you kind of understand. You get to see more points, and so you have to bring more clothespins, and you have to pinch. It takes more time to pinch the certain nodes, right?
Okay.
And also, we already named the magic. It's called the pinching.
The pinching, okay.
Yeah, and so that's the first law. The second law of the flaws is that every time you pinch some node, there's so much energy in the node that it will destroy anything that pinches it sooner or later. So you have to there's upkeep involved. And for some reason, metal doesn't work. It only wood. So that's why clothespins, right, is that you can only use clothespins. You can't use like a metal pin, and it's like you can't use something that can last forever. I can't think of any other weaknesses. And since it's a clothespin, it's literally a close range type magic. It's not a long range type magic. It's super powerful, as you can see, changing the properties. But you also have to be like in close vicinity, so someone can shoot you in the head. For the third part, which is derivability, right? So the derivability would be like being able to pinch the air, or being able to pinch people, right? And the limitations would be people would be able to kind of swipe it away, right? So if you're really fast, you can pinch multiple spots and paralyze them. And so some people are good at close combat pinching. So I guess this works better in a non-urban environment where there are no guns.
Why does it work better that way?
Because then the pinching doesn't, the close combat pinching won't work as well.
Is the clothespin magic purely combat based?
I'm saying it's everything based. Everything that's used in normal life can be used for combat. So I don't see the distinction. I want the combat to be used in everyday life as well.
Why would combat be used in everyday life?
Because you're pinching and changing the properties of objects, right? So if I wanted to make my armor stronger, I would pinch a part of it and make it like my shield. If I wanted to make my shield strong, super strong, I would pinch a part of it and make it more durable, right? But if they aim for the clothespin, right, which is easily knocked off and jostled, they could disrupt that magic, right? And then,
Okay.
but then you could also make like a piece of paper harder, and so you can use it as a plate for eating.
Oh, okay, cool. So this is a form of transmutation magic where we're changing the physical properties of objects. And so we might ask, is there only one effect that putting a pin on an object does, or does the user get to decide the effect
The
that it
user
will have?
gets to decide, so he has to understand sort of like the nodes of like, let's say there's like 4 types of nodes, like based on physics, like the matter, you know. And that's about all I came up with.
All right. Only wood clothespins work.
In order to make it simple, I think there should be 4 basic nodes that people learn first, and then it expands to like 8. But in the beginning, there should be only 3 to 4 nodes, like durableness, and then light hitting, and a dirt one would be something else. You know.
Okay, let's just pick, instead of saying 3 or 4, let's just say there's 4 basic nodes, and more advanced ones that can be detected with study and practice.
Yeah.
Maybe like the time node or something like that, right? You can make something last forever, or you can like reduce the aging of something. Those would be the sort of high-level transmutations.
Decay, not aging, but decay. The decay rate, it's more based on like physics almost, the physical properties of an object.
Right. Okay, well, let's just pick a cost or consequence, because that's the one thing I think we haven't touched on yet.
Oh, the cost of constant, like, okay, for the macro part, right? The consequence is that because this disrupts nature, there's storms that happen, right? There's a lot for macro level storms, and eventually, like, every time they use it, they weaken the fabric of the universe, and the demons are trying to get through this, right?
Oh,
this was
okay.
why this magic was introduced into this world. As far as personal cost is concerned, right? I think I want to make the clothespins sort of. They have to be. I guess you have to pay for them. You know, there's like a inscription on them that there's a monopoly. The Three Majors family has a monopoly on it, and you have to pay for them, and it's like expensive. I don't really know about the personal costs.
Okay, so there's an economic cost in that you just have to buy the special clothespins. You can't just use a regular, everyday, average, crappy one. You have to get the magic ones, I guess you're saying. In which case, yeah, it's going to be economically limited to those who can afford to participate in this magic or to practice it, because it would cost a lot.
And so I guess the unique part is that the MC has found a way to get around that.
Oh, get around the cost, you mean?
Yeah, he has found a way to get around buying it. But the limitation would be he learns how to pinch people with his or her fingers, right? And she knows this because his or her father, kind of developed it, and then the 2 families that have a monopoly on it killed her father to keep it secret, or captured her father. But even better, captured her father to keep it secret. But
Okay,
she escaped and learned it from a manual. Yeah.
Okay, so there's a family history. Your protagonist would have like a heritage, or family that created this or contributed to this in some way. Maybe that could help her or him avoid the cost by they get a bunch of free clothespins, or they inherit the factory that makes them, or something like that.
Something like that.
Great. So we have our abilities, we have our limitations, we have a good cost and consequence now. I think we are pretty much ready to put a pin in this one. A pincher can change the properties of materials by sticking pins on it on one of its kind of nodes that only they can detect. Of the 4 basic nodes, later they will learn even more of them that can create even more advanced effects. The user decides the material to change the object to, so they could change a ceramic plate into like fire if they wanted, I'm imagining, or they could change and make like a flaming frisbee, or they could change wood into metal or metal into wood, or things like this.
I'm thinking really physics, like mass and volume.
Okay, mass and volume, sure.
So then density requires mass and volume, so that would be a level 2 spell. So you could change the mass, and like you could either change the volume or you change the mass, like only one property. I have to look at my physics book to actually develop this, but that's the core idea.
Cool. The limitations are only special wooden clothespins work. You have to be very close up to use them, and this isn't a limitation, but at first you can't pinch people. I guess eventually you can learn that, but by default, no one can. And last, we have the cost, which is using it disrupts nature, which causes severe storms the more the magic is used. So there's kind of a communal cost to using it, I would think. The more that people all around the world are using it, or even maybe in your local area, the more the severe storms will happen.
Yep, that's it. I'm good.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. That wraps us up for this Magic System class today. I hope you guys could see these. Obviously, these are silly Magic System ideas, but you could at least see how we could use these principles to develop more serious Magic Systems we'd use in our books or movies or TV shows or things like this, and how you can think of these rules and limitations not as things to get in your way, but almost as great opportunities for you to come up with interesting uses and examples of what the magic can do. Thanks for sticking around, folks. We have a list of all the classes coming up right here. Let me just leave this up for a moment. We will be having new boot camps starting end of this month, start of next month. So if you guys are looking to write a new book, pilot, or movie coming up soon, there will be classes for that. Feel free to sign up if you're interested. Scriptcamp.net. You can sign up for unlimited membership and get access to every event on every server. Thanks so much for coming by, folks. We will see you next time. And for members, for subscribers, we have lab today from 4 to 6. We'll see you guys there. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.